Spider-Man Miles Morales, the game that spawned one of the most infamous reviews to date with a single quote.
The exaggerated swagger of a black teen. The exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
That reviewer has since been inducted into the Game Review Hall of Fame alongside the girl who bashed Pokemon Alpha Sapphire for having too much water, and the gaming journalist who couldn't beat the Cuphead tutorial. Let's start from the beginning with its predecessor. 2018's Spider-Man PS4 was a smash hit between its stunning visuals, unique and gripping storyline, stellar acting, and daring acrobatic feats. It was such an immersive and visceral experience that you could practically feel the wind pressure from Xbox and PC players punching the air, wishing they could play it.
It was this amazing, beautiful experience.
Hey, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
In typical Marvel fashion, the setup for the sequel was only presented to us at the tail end of the game, when Miles is bitten by my ex. Wait, by something toxic and clingy. Hang on, I got this, hold on. By a radioactive spider. Almost a whole year and one awkward conversation about Miles' changing body later.
Weird things have been going on. Like physically.
Miles completes his hero training and is sworn into the Spider Crew in a manner that I can only assume is what an actual cultist initiation process looks like.
That oath a real thing.
Totally. Definitely didn't just make it up.
Let's start by talking about the music. Where do I even begin? The soundtrack was composed by a wonderful man whose last name sounds like a type of pizza, John Paisano. He composed the score for the first game too, and boy did this man deliver. Okay, no more pizza puns. I think if you looked at the stats of how players spent most of their time in this game, most people would have days clocked on the main menu alone. I feel bad for the people that haven't gotten to play the game yet because they're still headbanging to that track. Hang in there, brothers. That beat will loosen its hold on you sooner or later. Paisano combines the classic Spider-Man orchestral style, complete with bombastic brass and string accompaniments, with some outright dirty kicks, snares, and hi-hats. It all comes together to form some kind of delicious culmination of ingredients that I just can't quite put my finger on. He's an innovator, like the first person to mix peanut butter and jelly, or the first person to mix peanut butter and chocolate, or... Hang on, I'll be right back. My bad, all this talk of sick beats made me hungry. Throw in some features by the likes of Jaden Smith and Lecrae, who I hadn't heard of before this game, but has a new fan in me, and the soundtrack is a bona fide masterpiece. Soundtrack aside, music plays a huge role in Miles' character too. He's an amateur beatmaker and lyricist in his off time. Between brainstorming lyrics while he's swinging around the city, to an entire side quest dedicated to finishing his late father's mixtape, Insomniac really made it a point to make music an important part of Miles' life, and I couldn't be more psyched about it. I'll now be rating the soundtrack using an extremely comprehensive list of criteria that many Ivy League colleges use to judge their applicants. Here we go. Lit. 10 out of 10. Vibes. 10 out of 10. Legitness. 10 out of 10. This comes out to an overall score of absolutely fucking slaps. The next thing I want to talk about is the gameplay. For the most part, the fundamentals of traversal and combat are mostly unchanged from Spider-Man PS4. You'll feel right at home when it comes time to thwip your first web in Miles' shoes. Web slinging feels as intuitive and fun as it was 2 years ago. Point launching, wall running, and web zipping all contribute to a fluid experience that's well crafted to maintain momentum at all times. It makes me laugh to think that someone got paid to design and implement a fast travel system that no one uses because of how fun it is to swing from one place to another. Like I mentioned earlier, the combat is pretty much exactly the same at the fundamental level. You can punch, you can kick, you can dodge, you can web zip, and use gadgets, which despite its simplicity makes for a really fun gameplay loop, but leave it to Insomniac to take a relatively straightforward combat system and turn it on its head in the best way possible. Miles' new powers add a metric buttload of new possibilities to the combat. His venom attacks do a ton of damage, can chain from one enemy to the next, act as a damage multiplier, and let's be honest, it just looks goddamn beautiful. His new cloaking ability doesn't do a whole lot as far as combat goes. You can basically disappear for a few seconds in the middle of a fight, which is a power I'm sure Nate Robinson would have liked to have. Speaking of cloaking, what's different, if anything, about the stealth in this game? This is going to be the tough love segment of the episode. I love stealth missions. I love the planning, the execution, the thrill of getting the drop on somebody.
Boy, Susie.
And Spider-Man Miles Morales delivers on all of those components, to an extent. It seems to me like stealth was developed as a secondary method of clearing a level to beating people unconscious, frying them like a toaster at a pool party, and straight up launching people off of bridges. I hate to make comparisons to other games, but let's quickly make comparisons to other games. We're all familiar with Souls-like games, right? Games that use Dark Souls' completely unique style of combat as a blueprint for their own. Well, Spider-Man Miles Morales is among many other third-person action games that would fall into the Arkham-like games category. You can make the argument that the Batman Arkham series established the closest thing to a perfect combat formula for third-person, close-quarters combat. On top of that, the stealth mechanics and level design in the Arkham games are equally sophisticated and challenging from a tactical perspective. Spider-Man Miles Morales does a great job of replicating this stealth system and tweaking it accordingly to fit Spider-Man's style. My only real criticism of the stealth sections is that they're usually very easy, tedious, and there isn't a whole lot of variation in the arenas to merit even having an attack plan. For example, in the Arkham games, it was to your benefit to take the time to learn the arena, create a course of action, and execute it stealthily, because taking on that many foes with firearms at once was usually a death sentence on higher difficulties. In Spider-Man Miles Morales, clearing an area is as simple as sticking to the ceiling or a crossbeam, firing a web to break up a group, and taking out the stragglers from up high, where there's virtually no consequence because the enemies in that game aren't capable of looking up apparently. You can just leave them up there, cocooned and dangling for the wind to have its way with them.
That's not good. Definitely passed out by now.
And even if you do get caught, you can cloak and run away to your heart's content, or choose to fight them head on because Neo's got nothing on Spidey, and it's usually quicker and more fun to do it that way anyway. Alright, so how's the story? For a game that's half the length of a AAA title, it's pretty great, and the perfect setup for a game meant to bridge the gap between Spider-Man PS4 and its eventual sequel. The quick breakdown is that Peter goes on a trip to Symkaria with MJ and leaves Miles in charge of protecting New York in his place.
I'm Spider-Man!
In the meanwhile, Miles' mom is running for office in Harlem, using her disdain for Roxxon, a massive energy corporation run by Troy Baker, as a platform to win over the working class. Suddenly, a cyber terrorist by the name of the Tinkerer steps onto the scene hell-bent on the complete and utter annihilation of the Roxxon company using their own tech, an energy source known as Newform, against them. Miles, along with his friend Genki, work together to fulfill his spiderly duties and protect the city on multiple fronts. It's a simple story and one that fits fairly well into the 8 to 10 hour campaign. Along the way, Miles learns how to use his new powers, makes a name for himself among the denizens of Harlem, and learns to stand on his own 2 feet as an independent hero. The main cast were all given a good deal of spotlight for us to get to know them. I never once thought there was a character I wish I could have seen more of because they were all very much present throughout the entire game, except for Spider-Man the Cat. I could have used a bit more of him. In the end, I felt like I knew a whole lot more about Miles than I did when I started. The game ultimately succeeds in its goal to serve as a world-building side story to hold players over until the next game, and believe me when I say, I can't wait. Till next time, take care of yourselves.